My favorite time of year as camp ramps up to its conclusion. We're going to talk about what is changing on this roster. Matt and Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com is going to give us all of his insight. Here we go. Hope you guys are ready. Welcome to Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Matt is here from Chiefs Digest. We're going to talk as the conclusion of training camp comes up. What are we going to see that's different? We have a lot to tell you about. Thanks for making us your first listen as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free on every platform. That means there's another show that you probably need to check out, maybe the draft show. I'm just saying you might be able to hear a friendly voice over there. I would appreciate it. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics, NFL33.com, RGRFootball.com, and all kinds of other things that are just floating around my brain. So we will get into it. The coolest day of camp. Matt Derrick has a smile on his face. What was different for you today?
Today it was wet. Temperatures were in the 60s in August in Kansas City, St. Joe. So, yeah, there's one for you. But very wet. It rained hard overnight, so the field was pretty moist. And then we had a nice little mist that turned into rain the entire time. So, yeah, you saw one of the sloppier, messier, cooler, wetter practices you will ever see in St. Joe.
Okay. Well, and once again, I guess it was just meant to be that I missed that this year. So that's good. What I want to ask is, does that make it harder to make some of the adjustments that they know they want to make following the first preseason game?
It really doesn't to me. And part of it is that, one, Andy Reid always likes to get one of these days. I mean, he wants his team to have a day in training camp where it's not just hot, that's their adversity. He likes to have some rain. He likes to have some weather because they're going to play in it this year. So he wants teams to practice in it. And so they sometimes even make some adjustments based on days like this to the, maybe the plays and some of the things that they're doing just to account for that. But no, I mean, I think that they were still able to get some of the things that they wanted. And honestly, the defense needed a good day after they kind of struggled on Monday. And that's one of the things, and Steve Spagnuolo talked about it today with us, is that, people often think, hey, you come back after an off day, especially, a day after a game, you get a little bit of a break, you've gone, maybe you even get home for a couple hours or something, and then you come back to St. Joe and you think you should be all refreshed. I guarantee you, it seems like always one of the worst practices is that first practice after the first preseason game, because the focus just isn't there. I mean, I think, guys are a little bit tired and worn down, and they're also near the end of camp and kind of want to get out of there. So, some of it's about fighting through the adversity of that. And, and Spagnuolo kind of used that with his defense to say, yeah, you guys were terrible on Monday, need to get better. And then Tuesday they go out and they had a really good practice.
Well, I'm interested to hear the details about that. One guy missed practice today, speaking of being sore and trying to recover from that. Juju Smith-Schuster called it a sore knee. Do we have any more explanation or expectation on him and where he's at health-wise?
That's the depth of it right now. And, yeah, we don't know the nature of it, but it doesn't sound like it's anything serious, and it doesn't necessarily sound like it's anything that's, mechanically wrong with the knee. Maybe even just may have taken a hit on it. We don't know for sure. It hasn't been described as a knee contusion necessarily. So let's see. But no, nobody is treating this injury at this point as anything serious or long-term.
Okay. Well, that's good. I think that brings us to the guy who got the attention the other day and had a nice game out and certainly got some attention here in practice today. Evidently, defense was winning the day, but MVS looked like, as you can call him the one, you can call him the two, you can call him, who cares, number B, for all it matters. But it goes to show that Patrick Mahomes needs multiple players to be able to step up. How did you like that transition both over the weekend and today?
Yeah, I mean, I think MVS has continued to kind of evolve. I mean, it's, he had a really good offseason program, and that probably created a lot of expectations for training camp for him to be kind of at the next level. And I don't know if he necessarily did that, but I think he's just been able to maintain. That's just speaks really to me how far he advanced he seemed when he came into this offense. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You still see some of the things that you heard about MVS coming into this, which is that the inexplicable drops will hit him. Mm-hmm. But other than, some of those that we have seen, we also have seen him make plenty of tough catches. And we've also seen him do some great work in the short intermediate game, which was also a knock on him that, that he was just a deep threat and that was it. He's shown in camp that that's not the case, that he can do a lot of different things. I think we even saw in the limited work on Saturday that, hey, he's going to be a threat in different parts of the field. It is not just that. The drops, I based on everything that we've seen, I am sure there are going to be some head scratchers this season that will drive fans crazy, but I still think by and large, the good will outweigh the bad.
That's kind of the way that I feel too. I hope that it comes to fruition that way. It looked to me that we have a couple of things evolving. Was there any movement at either the running back or the wide receiver position here on Tuesday at practice in the rain?
Yeah, there hasn't been necessarily a whole lot of changes. I mean, the one thing that I think we can see is just that the short list is thinning a little bit. I don't think there's any doubt right now that, hey, Chiefs are going to be keeping at minimum of 5 receivers, and you know who 4 of those are. And I think you can, with almost 100% certainty, put down Justin Watson as that 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Question is going to be the 6th, and by what we've seen, both on Saturday and in a couple of practices since then, it's probably either Shareece Fenton or Josh Gordon, and it could be neither one if they decide just to stick with 5. But that seems to be the case. The running back rotation really hasn't changed much. I mean, it's been the same guys, as far as Clyde and Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco getting to work with the ones. Then, it's Ronald Jones, then Derrick Gore. That's kind of, where the rotation still sits. And yeah, where Ronald Jones fits into all of this continues to be an enigma and a mystery. If the Chiefs decide to keep 5 running backs with Mike Burton as the 5th guy as the fullback, and to keep 4 more, maybe Ronald Jones try making this team. But if it's 3, it's suddenly start to get really hard to see where he fits into this room.
Yeah, that's a tough one. One guy that it won't be will be wide receiver Devin Gray. He and D lineman Austin Edwards were let go today to get down to the 85. Another surprising cut that we haven't talked to you about yet that I think caught me certainly by surprise. Didn't catch Mike Vrabel by much more surprise because he made a move to correct that. We'll talk about that on the backside of this because we have a new sponsor I want to tell you guys about because it is almost NFL season. You got to love this time of year. I certainly do. And if you're into sports betting or fantasy or anything where you need the data, you got to go get a competitive edge to win. And that is the Elias Game Plan app, where you can get all the information from the people that put it out. It's from Elias Sports Bureau, the official statisticians of pro sports leagues, including the NFL, but not limited to them as well. They have a specialized app that gives you all the information that you need, head-to-head comparisons, all the insights, and all the information that helps you get an edge, whether it's fantasy or whether you're laying some money on the line. We'll talk about doing that later. Player news is validated and the records are official. That's what makes them different. And from that point, take my advice and go download the app. You can do it today. And with all the features and all the times that are available, take your time and take your game to the next level with the Elias Game Plan app. The season's right around the corner. You want to find a way to get that edge. It's in every app store. Go check it out. That's Elias Game Plan. Now, what caught me by surprise, I think it surprised Mike Vrabel too, because he went and made a claim for Lonnie Johnson, who was let go in the initial effort to get to 85. I know it had been an enigma all preseason, to tell you the truth, but in the end, how much did it surprise you?
Only the timing of it, that Lonnie Johnson was one of the first 5. You certainly got the sense that maybe in a situation like that where you've got a veteran, that, you kind of know what he's got, that maybe the Chiefs were just evaluating some of the younger players, and that maybe they would also keep Lonnie Johnson around just in case you get some injuries. But really, I mean, even going back to OTAs, it was starting to seem just to really be hard to see where Lonnie Johnson fit into this defense and with what the Chiefs were doing. And it's still a bit of a mystery, because if you remember the timing, the Chiefs traded for Lonnie Johnson after the draft. I mean, it was after they brought in, 4 cornerbacks in this year's draft class. So, I mean, he was definitely plan B. I mean, this was the guy that, they knew was there if none of these guys panned out. And then the reality of it is that Chiefs feel pretty good about all 4 of these cornerbacks that they landed. So there wasn't really a place for Lonnie Johnson, and it never really got an opportunity. I mean, he was stuck on the 3rd team pretty much all of St. Joe, and it didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense because it looked like he was playing good football. But, if you've got these younger guys in front of him, there's just no place. So it doesn't surprise me that another team picked him up. I mean, he's still a young guy. He's got some experience, but it was increasingly hard to see where he fit into that room.
And I want to piggyback off of that. We'll go back to the offense in the next segment, folks. But with that knowledge, the rookies have obviously played in front of him, played, I think, better against the Bears than I expected, both for Josh Williams as well as Jalen Watson. So J-Dub and J-Dub, I think that made me feel like that is the impetus to make that move. Not the reverse, that Lonnie was playing so poorly that they had an opportunity to go grab playtime, but that they grabbed it, and that's what forced him out. So my question to you is, now that we're into the gap and we're looking at preseason game number 2, what do we need to see from the young corners or the corner position as a whole in this second preseason game to make us feel like that's the right decision, that they're prepared and they have the talent that they need to go into the season?
Well, in India, Reid kind of hit it on the head. I mean, it's that they do trust these guys, but they need to continue emphasizing that these guys need to get better. I mean, there needs to be continue to be progress. None of these guys are finished works of art at this point. But as I've been saying, tap the brakes a little bit about what to expect from this rookie group, because the Chiefs like them and they've gotten them plenty of experience. With Rashaad Fenton being out, they really got a lot of work. But, what we have seen in training camp this week is that the Chiefs are prepared to go into the season with L'Jarius Sneed and Rashaad Fenton as their starting corners. And McDuffie's going to be the number 3 guy. He's going to be coming in when they're going to nickel packages. Doesn't mean he's necessarily playing in the slot. That's probably going to be Sneed. McDuffie might be the backup there, or it certainly gives you flexibility to move those guys around. But you're also talking about Jalen Watson and Jalen Williams being, the 4 and 5. With Williams being ahead there at this point, and then even Nazi Johnson. I mean, it's a conversation about whether you can keep 6th or whether you can squeeze him onto a practice squad because they like him as well. But that's what they are. I mean, they're your 4th, 5th, and 6th corners. If everybody stays healthy, you're not going to ask a lot from this year. They're here to learn, and they're here to be the future, because Rashaad Fenton's a potential free agent at the end of the season, and L'Jarius Sneed in 2 years. So you've drafted what you hope is the core of the future, and that's what you're planning for. This year, you don't need a ton out of them unless you get some injuries. But what you're looking for is progress, and that's what the Chiefs are looking for on Thursday. On Saturday against the Washington. They just want to see these guys continue to get better, and they want to see the one thing that to avoid is the mistakes. If you can avoid the big mistakes, especially in these vanilla game plans that they're running, and show that you understand, the concepts, Chiefs are going to be pretty happy with that.
Well, and I think they should, especially given the fact that Rashaad Fenton appears and at least says that he's back to 100%, ready to go. How does he look to you, and is that the case?
Yeah, and Steve Spagnuolo said, hey, there's a little bit of rust there, and I think you can see that. But at the same time, I mean, he's been very physical, and in the first couple of days of being back and full 11s. Got a little chippy a little bit on Monday with Mahomes and Kelsey that you may have heard about. But that's Rashaad Fenton. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they like him. I mean, he's an aggressive guy, and he certainly hasn't backed off on that. If he's 100% healthy, as he claims, and the Chiefs seem to think that he is, then I mean, I think you can pretty easily see him stepping in and being, the guy he's been in the past, and maybe taking that final step this year towards being a true starter, because the Chiefs are going to ask him to do that. It's still early to me to be able to say, hey, he's 100% there. We need to see more, because it's just been a couple of practices. But at this point, I've been fairly, impressed with what I've seen so far.
Well, I think that's probably a relief, because that position has to be relied on, and they have to turn that into something that can support the changeover in the safety room, who looks very interesting, especially in the kicking department. We'll get to that here in a minute, folks, because all this goes into getting all the information that you need to put your money on the line in a smart way that gets you the return that you're looking for. And the easiest, fastest way to do that is at betonline.net. Find all the information for all the sports, even those ones that appear to matter to other people that aren't football fans. You can check that out with the odds, the lines, the games, everything that you need, extra podcasts, articles, all kinds of deep dives into stat lines for all the sports, but especially for your favorite football team. The bet goes the way that wagering information points it to, and that's how you get covered and you make your bet back. Head over to BetOnline today. Check out their website from any device that you can get there. It's super easy. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. And we have to take a look at the other side of the ball because, like we talked about, running backs are still a bit of a mystery. It'll come down to how they build the roster, how many slots that they have, those kind of things. But that last competition for wide receiver seems to be pretty set. They've made a couple of moves, but there's one guy in particular that I'm waiting to see, and I want your theory on why I haven't gotten much out of him. Is Shareece Ailey going to have a magical toe stub here on the last day of camp or something?
That would be my guess as being the most likely candidate to perhaps mysteriously strain his hamstring or something in the final preseason game, or maybe in that final week of practice before the season starts, before the cut down to 53. He's a really intriguing player, and and he's raw enough that I could see that maybe there's another team that's not going to want to take a chance of having to put him on the 53, because he is still a work in progress. But as you said, I mean, there's some really interesting things to see there. I mean, and the one thing, he has been getting some looks on special teams, especially in the return game, but nothing that's really at this point taken off. So, yeah, I mean, I do at the same one time kind of feel like the Chiefs are keeping him a little bit behind the scenes and a little bit of under wraps, maybe trying to think that this is a way that they could kind of keep him as a red shirt on the practice squad and mature a little bit. But he's intriguing, but it hasn't been something that's necessarily just blown your doors off during training camp.
Okay, that's all right. I just want to know who the next Dexter McCluster is. That's fine. I can live with that. There are other positions, and I think for the next preseason game, the thing that I need to see the most is improvement at the backup offensive tackle positions. I was not impressed with anybody after the ones left that ball game. Am I wrong, or did you see threads of hope in what we saw on the field there?
Well, you're not wrong, and I mean that has been a topic in St. Joe that there hasn't been anybody in that group that's really put a stranglehold on the position. I mean, and we've seen a fairly decent amount of rotation there. Roderick Johnson, remember, started camp as the guy who was replacing Orlando Brown until he arrived, and Johnson's kind of moved into the background now to the point where maybe even Jaron Christian has moved ahead of him. Prince Tega Wanago is probably ahead of him. There's a lot of questions there, and I'm with you. I mean, certainly if you look at some of the problems that the Chiefs had in the second half of that game, it was really the offensive line across the board that struggled, and the tackles in particular. Darian Kennard has been a guy that really hasn't. He's had some moments, but hasn't done anything to really move up off the third team. And that's kind of where he's been at most of training camp. So, I mean, the one thing that's pretty clear and abundantly clear is that Andrew Wiley is the starting right tackle on this team, and there's a fairly wide gap between him and the next choice. So who are going to be the swing tackles on this team? It's still up in the air, but I'm with you. I mean, based on what we saw in that Bears game, that's a position that requires some really hard look right now. And if you told me that the swing tackle beginning the season wasn't on this roster, I'd listen to you, because I think it's something the Chiefs are going to keep looking at.
That's where I'm concerned too. Tim Terry has to go find somebody that they feel they can bring in as a cut down casualty that can actually upgrade that backup spot. I think that's more likely than it is not. I think it's also something that's more imperative than most people think that it is. If they're not able to upgrade from someone that's already on this roster right now, I can't think of many scenarios that would be worse than Wiley or Orlando missing time. Is there a way that you can see someone can progress to the point where you would feel safe?
Well, I mean, Jaron Christian's played in this league, so you feel like that there's at least a floor there that even and some of the problems with the tackle position, I mean, it could very well have just been that the line across the board, and really the backup lines across the board, didn't play very well against Chicago. I mean, it wasn't exclusively the tackle position. I mean, it was kind of everybody had a little bit of a hand in that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some of that, but yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely a concern, because at this point, there's not anybody that I think you could absolutely point to and say that, hey, you're comfortable with this person going out there and being able to man the position in an NFL game if needed. I mean, Winogo is probably the one that people have the highest hopes for, but once again, is untested. He's still really unproven at this level.
I'm really interested to see how it comes out. We will see 2 more days of camp, folks, and the next ball game coming at you. Make sure you check Chiefs Digest for all of the information that Matt is putting out there from camp as we get down to the end. Congratulations. Just about another one under the belt, Matt.
We're almost there. So after Thursday, when they start taking her down to camp and the tents around us during practice, we'll know we'll know we're there.
Beat feet and get back to town. Folks, thank you for being with us. Check out all the information from Matt, and we'll be back with you tomorrow to break down who's going to make it and who's not as we get ready for preseason game number 2. Have a good one. We'll